The scream tore through the night like a knife. It was a kind of sound that made the air freeze and time pause, a woman's desperate cry, followed by the heavy, sickening thud of a body hitting the tile floor below. For a brief moment, everything was still. Then came the echo of broken glass, the scattering of phone across the floor, and the choking sob of a woman who had just been betrayed in the worst possible way. Upstairs, in the dimly lit hallway of their grand duplex in Surrey, a tall man stood at the top of the staircase, his chest rising and falling heavily. His right hand still trembled. His eyes darted between his trembling fingers, and the unmoving body sprawled below. Blood trickled from the woman's forehead, winding slowly like a red snake across the white tiles. The man took a step back, his mind spinning. He hadn't meant for it to go this far. At least, that's what he told himself. "Jesus, what have I done?" he muttered, his voice shaking. But his own words sounded distant, hollow, like they came from someone else. Down below, the woman, his wife, lay still. Her hand, once gripping the rail, had fallen limp. Her nightgown was torn at the shoulder. The glow from the chandelier made her brown skin glisten with blood and sweat. "Babe," he whispered hoarsely, slowly descending the stairs, his heart pounding like a drum in his ears. "Tasha, talk to me. I didn't mean to." But as he reached the last step, his world collapsed. He saw the small pool of blood growing beneath her stomach, seeping through the fabric of her gown. He froze. A flash of memory hit him. Her laughter earlier that night, her hand brushing her belly, whispering, "He's moving again," their unborn child. And in that instant, the man's knees buckled. He fell beside her, shaking her shoulders. "No, no, no, no. Wake up. You can't do this to me now." I said stop shouting, not... His words crumbled into sobs. He pressed his palm against her cheek, then her stomach. Nothing, only silence. Outside, a stray dog barked. The power flickered. Lagos night hummed indifferently. A door creaked open upstairs. The maid, frightened by the noise, peeked out and screamed when she saw the scene. "Yezu! Madam! Oh, God! Sir, what happened? Call the hospital!" he shouted, panic slicing through his grief. "Now!" But the maid had already dashed down, crying as she reached for her phone. Within minutes, the sirens of a nearby clinic ambulance wailed down the street. The flashing red and blue lights cut through the night as neighbors gathered, whispering and pointing. 2 paramedics rushed in. They checked her pulse, her breathing. One shook his head slowly. "Let's take her now. She's still got a heartbeat, week 1. As they lifted her onto the stretcher, the man stumbled backward, gripping the stair rail for balance. His hands were shaking so violently that he couldn't even wipe the tears from his face. He followed them to the ambulance, muttering, "Please, save her, save them. I didn't mean to push her that hard." At the hospital, the white fluorescent lights felt too bright, too cruel. Nurses moved in and out, whispering in codes. He sat outside the emergency ward, drenched in sweat. His shirt was torn, his face streaked with tears. Every second felt like punishment. He remembered the argument. It had started over something small. Her phone ringing, his jealousy, her laughter that sounded too carefree. "I'm your wife, Chris. Why don't you trust me?" she had yelled. "You keep secrets from me." He barked back, his temper boiling. He'd grab her wrist, she'd pulled away, and then it happened. One angry shove. One fatal slip. The door opened. A nurse stepped out, her expression grave. "Mr. Adeyemi," she said softly, "we tried our best. We lost a baby." He felt the world tilt. "And your wife, she's in a coma. We don't know if she'll wake up." He blinked, his breath catching in his throat. "No, no, no, no," he whispered, gripping his head. "This can't be happening." The nurse placed a hand on his shoulder, but he shrugged it off violently. It was just an argument. She fell, I didn't mean... The nurse's eyes turned cold. "You pushed her, sir. The bruises show. And the police are already here." His head jerked up. "The police?" Behind the nurse, 2 uniformed officers stepped forward. "Christopher Adeyemi, you're under arrest for domestic violence leading to grievous harm and loss of an unborn child." He staggered backward, His knees buckling as handcuffs clicked around his wrists. I loved her, he whispered weakly. I loved her. The officer's voice was firm. Then why did you push her, sir? 2 weeks later, the same house stood quiet. Curtains drawn. Dusk gathering. The maid had quit. The neighbors avoided the gate. Inside, the sound of silence was louder than any scream. But somewhere in a hospital room across Lagos, a faint sound echoed, the slow, fragile beat of a heart monitor. A woman's hand twitched. Her eyelids fluttered. Then her fingers moved. Her lips parted slightly as her breathing deepened. Tasha was waking up, and though her body was weak, her heart remembered everything. The fight, the shove, the fall, the betrayal. Her return would not be quiet, and her husband's peace was about to end forever.
The first sound she heard was a steady beep of a heart monitor. The second was her own ragged breath, slow, shallow, and full of pain. When Tasha opened her eyes, the world looked strange. Everything was bright white. The walls, the ceiling, the sheets, and the faint smell of disinfectant filled her nose. For a moment, she thought she had died. But then came the dull ache in her body, in her head, her ribs, her stomach. She turned her neck slightly and winced. Tubes ran across her arms. A drip hung beside her bed, dripping slowly. Her lips were dry. She swallowed hard and tried to speak, but only a whisper came out. "W, where am I?" A nurse rushed over. "You're awake. Oh my God, you're awake. Please don't move too much. You've been in a coma for 2 weeks." The words hit Tasha like a storm. Her mind began to race. Flashes of memory came back in waves. The shouting, the anger, the push, the feeling of falling through the air, the pain, and then her baby. Her hand moved instinctively to her belly. Empty. Flat. "No," she whispered, shaking her head. My baby, my baby." The nurse looked away, tears forming in her eyes. "I'm sorry, ma'am. The doctors tried everything, but—" She couldn't finish. Tasha screamed. It was a sound of raw, unbearable pain, one that filled the room and silenced everyone outside. Nurses rushed in, trying to calm her, but she pushed their hands away. "Leave me. Just leave me alone," she cried. "He did this to me. He killed my baby." The doctor walked in quickly, calm but firm. "Miss Adeyemi, please, you need to rest. You've been through a lot. Don't stress your body." But Tasha's tears wouldn't stop. Her entire world had been shattered. The child she had prayed for, the life she had protected, was gone because of him, because of Christopher. Later that night, after everyone had left, Tasha stared at the ceiling in silence. The machines beeped rhythmically beside her bed. The moonlight crept through the hospital window, touching her face gently. Her mind replayed everything like a bad dream. The argument, his jealous eyes, his loud voice, his hand reaching out, the shove. She could still hear her own scream before she hit the ground. Her tears soaked the pillow. "Why, Chris? Why would you hurt me?" she whispered. Suddenly, the door creaked. A figure stepped inside, quietly, a man in a black hoodie. He closed the door slowly and moved toward her bed. Tasha froze, fear gripping her chest. But as the man stepped into the light, her heart stopped. It was him. "Chris," she said, voice trembling. "What are you doing here?" He looked thinner, his face pale, eyes red and tired. He held a bouquet of white lilies in his hands, his wrists still marked where the handcuffs had been. "I had to see you," he said softly. "I've been going crazy. I can't sleep. I can't eat. I'm sorry." Tasha's eyes hardened. She tried to sit up, wincing in pain. "You pushed me down the stairs, Chris. You killed our child." His face twisted. "No, Tasha. It was an accident. You know I'd never." "An accident?" She cut him off, her voice shaking. "You were angry. You said I was cheating, remember? You said no man would ever want me again. And then you pushed me." His hands trembled. "Please, Tasha, I wasn't thinking straight. I lost control. I need you to forgive me. Please." Her voice broke. "You lost control and I lost everything." The room was filled with the sound of her sobbing. He reached for her hand, but she pulled it away sharply. "Don't touch me." He stood there for a moment, his breathing uneven. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. "I'll make it right. I promise you, I'll make it right. I'll never hurt you again." She looked at him with disbelief. "You can't fix this, Chris. You already did what no man should ever do. You took my child. You took my peace." He took a step closer, tears running down his face. "I'll prove it to you. I'll change. Just give me one more chance." But before Tasha could reply, the door burst open. A nurse gasped, "Sir, you can't be here. Security." 2 guards rushed in and grabbed him. Chris didn't fight. He just looked at Tasha as they dragged him out. "Please," he said one last time, "don't give up on me." The door slammed shut. The room fell quiet again. Tasha stared at the lilies he had dropped on the floor. One of them was crushed under his shoe. She turned her face to the wall and whispered, "You already made sure of that, Chris." 2 days later, the doctor walked in with a calm smile. "You're healing well, Mrs. Adeyemi. You'll be discharged soon. But do you have a place to go?" Tasha hesitated. The house where she had almost died was the last place she wanted to be. "I'll stay with my aunt for now," she said quietly. "Good." The doctor nodded. "And one more thing. The police asked if you'd like to press full charges. It's your choice." Tasha looked out the window at the busy Lagos street below. The noise of traffic, the laughter people, the life outside, all of it felt distant. She closed her eyes. "Not yet," she said slowly. "Let him think he's free." The doctor frowned. "Are you sure?" Tasha's voice dropped to a whisper. "Yes, because when I return, he'll know what it feels like to lose everything." The sun was setting over Lagos when Tasha stepped out of the hospital for the first time in 3 weeks. Her steps were slow, steady, but every movement carried a silent storm. The bandages on her arm itched beneath her jacket. Her eyes, once soft and trusting, now glimmered with quiet, controlled fire. A taxi waited by the curb. She climbed in and told the driver, "Oshodi, Emmanuel Street, by the Mechanic Junction." The driver nodded, glancing at her through the mirror. "You sure you okay, madam? You look like person way never rests for days." She smiled faintly, though her voice was heavy. "I'm fine. Just take me there." As the taxi pulled into the busy evening traffic, Lagos came alive around her. Hawkers shouting, Okadas zigzagging between cars, horns blaring like an angry chorus. Yet she barely saw any of it. Her mind was somewhere else. She thought of the baby that would never be born. She thought of Chris's face when he pushed her. And she thought of the moment she woke up in the hospital, realizing that the life she knew was gone forever. Now there was only one thing left, payback. When she arrived at her aunt's house, Annie Saad burst into tears at the sight of her. "My child, I thought we lost you. Look at you, thin like broomstick." She hugged her tightly, rocking her gently. Tasha tried to smile. "I'm fine, Andy. I'm just tired." "Where is that your useless husband?" Andy Saad hissed. "After what he did, they should have locked him up forever." Tasha sighed and sat down. "They arrested him, but his lawyer got him bail. He's still walking free." "Ha! Now this Lagos police way day collect envelope, ABI." The older woman muttered bitterly. "Don't worry. God will fight for you." Tasha looked down at her hands, her voice barely a whisper. "Maybe, but sometimes God waits for us to fight first." Andy Saad gave her a sharp look. "What do you mean by that?" "Nothing," Tasha said softly. "Just that I'm not done yet." That night, sleep refused to come. She lay on the small bed in her aunt's spare room, listening to the faraway hum of generators and the occasional shout of night traders. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the staircase again. The fall, the blood, the lifeless tiny hand she never got a hold. Her chest tightened. She turned to her side and whispered into the darkness, "You took my baby, Chris. Now I'll take your peace." Meanwhile, on the other side of the city, Chris sat alone in his house. The same house that had once echoed with laughter and love. Now it was a tomb. The neighbors barely spoke to him. His office had suspended him after the scandal hit social media. Pictures of him being dragged by police had gone viral. Wife beater banker. That's what the blogs called him. He stared at a half-empty glass of whiskey, his eyes bloodshot. The TV flickered, playing an old romantic movie, the kind he and Tasha used to watch together. He let out a bitter laugh. I ruined everything, he whispered to himself. But deep down, another voice fought back, a stubborn, angry voice. She'll forgive me. She always does. She has to. She's my wife. He picked up his phone and scrolled through their old pictures. Smiles, vacations, anniversaries. For a brief second, his heart softened. Then he saw one photo, Tasha pregnant, glowing, smiling at him. He threw the phone across the room. Damn it! The screen shattered against the wall. Chris buried his face in his hands and groaned. I'll fix this, he muttered. I'll get her back, no matter what it takes. The next morning, Tasha visited the police station to retrieve her personal items that had been logged as evidence, her phone, her jewelry, and the blood-stained gown from that night. The officer in charge, a middle-aged man with weary eyes, handed her a small box. Madam, I just want to say, nah, God save you that night. Most women no day wake up from that kind of fall. Tasha gave him a polite nod. Thank you, officer. But maybe I woke up for a reason. The man looked at her curiously. You plan to press new charges? She closed the box slowly and met his gaze. Not yet. I'm planning something better. Weeks passed. Tasha grew stronger. She started volunteering at a community center for women who survived abuse. People admired her strength without knowing the storm she was quietly preparing. At night, she began writing in a small leather notebook. Details, dates, memories, everything Chris had done, everything she had lost. It wasn't just therapy. It was her blueprint. One evening, her aunt walked in and found her staring out the window, lost in thought. My child, are you sure you're okay? She asked gently. You've changed. Tasha smiled faintly. I had to, Auntie. You can't face a monster and stay the same. Her aunt shook her head. Don't let hatred eat you up. Leave him to God. Tasha's eyes darkened. Oh, I'll leave something to God. But the rest? That's for me. A few days later, Chris saw her for the first time since the hospital. He was driving home from a meeting when he spotted her crossing the street near the market, healthy, walking confidently, dressed in a flowing Ankara gown, her head held high. He pulled over immediately and jumped out of the car. Tasha. She froze, her heart pounding. Slowly, she turned to face him. He ran toward her, desperate. You're okay. Thank God. I've been calling you. Writing, please, just talk to me. People began to watch. She crossed her arms, her face calm but cold. Don't cause a scene, Chris. I just want to talk, he pleaded. Please, let's go somewhere private. She looked at him for a long moment, then said quietly, You already had your chance to talk, the night you pushed me down those stairs. He flinched. It was an accident. Maybe, she said softly, turning to walk away. But what's coming next won't be. He watched her disappear into the crowd, her words echoing in his mind like a curse. What's coming next? He repeated under his breath. What does that mean? He didn't know it yet, but his nightmare had just begun. Rain poured heavily over Lagos that night. The city lights shimmered against wet roads, and thunder rolled far above the clouds like an angry drum. Inside his car, Chris gripped the steering wheel tightly, staring at his own reflection in the mirror. His eyes were sunken, his beard uneven, his shirt soaked with sweat and rain. Tasha's words from the market replayed in his head like a broken record. You already had your chance to talk, the night you pushed me down those stairs. What's coming next won't be. He slammed his fist against the steering wheel. What does she mean? What is she planning? He muttered angrily. For the first time, he felt something he hadn't felt since the night of the accident. Fear. The next morning, Tasha sat in her aunt's kitchen, sipping tea slowly. The steam fogged her face as she scrolled through her phone. Every few seconds, she smiled faintly. Annie Sod noticed. You've been smiling like somebody way just won lottery. What's going on? Tasha looked up, her eyes sharp and calm. I've been doing my homework. Homework. Yes. On Chris. His company, his accounts, his habits, his weaknesses. Her aunt's eyes widened. Tasha, you're not planning something bad, I hope? Tasha smiled, the kind of smile that hides a storm. No, Auntie, I'm planning something necessary. For weeks, Tasha observed Chris without him noticing. She knew his routines, his work hours, his gym schedule, the bar he went to every Friday night to drown his guilt. She even discovered the new woman he had started seeing, a young real estate agent named Bella, whose only interest seemed to be his fading wealth. At first, Tasha wanted to confront him publicly, to expose him for the man he really was. But then she realized something deeper. Humiliation wouldn't be enough. She wanted him to lose what he valued most, his comfort, his pride, his control. It started small. One day, Chris woke up to find his office email hacked, his client's data leaked, his reputation questioned. The next week, his car loan application was mysteriously canceled. And soon after, an anonymous blog posted pictures of him at the bar, drunk, yelling at Bella. Within a month, he lost 2 major clients and received a warning letter from his company. "Who's doing this to me?" he shouted, throwing papers across his office. But deep inside, a small voice already knew. He picked up his phone and called her. "Tasha, please, I just want to talk." She answered calmly. "Talk about what, Chris? About the baby you killed? Or the lies you told the world?" His voice broke. "You're destroying me." She smiled faintly. "No, Chris, I'm just giving you a taste of what you gave me." And she ended the call. That night, he sat alone on the floor of his living room, surrounded by empty bottles. The rain beat against the window, and the television flickered without sound. He pressed his hand to his face and whispered, "I'm sorry, Tasha. I'm sorry. Please stop." But she didn't stop. Over the next few days, more of his secrets appeared online. Old text messages, photos, even bank transfers to Bella. It wasn't just embarrassment now. It was ruin. Meanwhile, Tasha's life seemed to blossom. She joined a local organization that helped women escape abusive marriages, and soon she became a voice of hope for many. People called her the strong one. They didn't know the fire burning behind her calm eyes. One afternoon, after a speaking event, she sat in her car for a long time, staring at her reflection in the mirror. Her inner voice whispered, "You're becoming stronger." But another voice, the softer one, asked, "And at what cost?" She blinked back tears. For a moment, she saw her unborn child in her mind's eye. Smiling, reaching out, her hands trembled. "I'm doing this for you," she whispered, for what he took. 2 nights later, Chris showed up at her aunt's gate. It was late, past midnight, and thunder growled in the distance. The guard hesitated to open. "Olga, Madam No Day won't see you, oh." But Chris pushed through. "Please, just tell her I'm here." Tasha came out, wrapped in a shawl, her face expressionless. "What are you doing here?" she asked coldly. He fell to his knees right there in the rain. "Tasha, please. I've lost everything. My job, my money, my peace. I know it's you. I know you're behind this." She didn't flinch. "And what if I am?" He raised his head, rain mixing with tears. "I deserve punishment, but please, stop. I can't take it anymore." She looked down at him, her eyes sharp like glass. "You think pain is measured only by what you lose? You don't know pain. Chris, pain is losing what you can never get back." He sobbed quietly, gripping the wet ground. "I loved you, Tasha." She turned away. "No, Chris, you own me, and when I stopped being yours, you decided to destroy me." Her voice softened for the first time. "But here's the truth. You didn't destroy me. You made me powerful." He looked up, defeated. "Please, don't do this anymore." She paused and whispered, "I'm not done yet." And she walked inside. As the thunder rolled, Chris knelt in the mud outside the gate, broken. His life was collapsing around him, and he knew it wasn't over. Inside the house, Tasha stood by the window, watching him leave. Her aunt came into the room, quietly. "Is that your husband again?" she asked softly. "Yes," Tasha said, her eyes cold. "But soon, he'll be nothing but a memory." Andy sighed. You're playing with fire, my child. Don't let revenge eat you. Tasha looked out into the storm and said, It's not revenge, Andy. It's balance. Viewers, what would you do if the person you loved most became the reason you lost everything? Would you forgive, or would you make them feel your pain? Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, and share your thoughts below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. You're watching Tales by Wealth. The following morning dawned gray and heavy, as though the city itself carried the weight of secrets. The rain had stopped, but puddles shimmered across the street in front of Annie Sada's house. Inside, Tasha sat at the dining table, scrolling through her phone again. Her eyes were calm, her movements deliberate. Andy Saad walked in, holding a tray of akra and pap. Eat something, my dear. Revenge no day fill stomach. Tasha smiled faintly. I'm not hungry, Annie. Not yet. Saad frowned. Tasha, listen to me. You've made your point. That man is finished already. Let it end here. But Tasha didn't respond. She was staring at a photo on her phone. Chris and the new woman, Bella, laughing together at a restaurant. It had been posted just hours earlier. Her fingers tightened around the phone. He moves on like nothing happened, she said quietly. He thinks pain is something you can escape. Tasha, her aunt said firmly, forgive and move forward. If you keep feeding this anger, it will eat you alive. But Tasha's eyes stayed on the photo. No, Andy, this isn't anger anymore. It's justice. Across town, Chris sat in his car outside his bank's office, gripping the steering wheel. His stomach was twisted into knots. He hadn't been inside since the scandal broke. People whispered, co-workers avoided him, and Bella had started keeping her distance. As he stepped out of the car, he saw the HR manager waiting at the door. Chris, we need to talk. He forced a smile. I know. I've been a mess lately, but I'll get back on track. The woman's face was blank. It's not about that. The board met last night. They've decided to terminate your contract. His smile faded. Terminate? You brought too much attention to the company, and there's a police report involved. I'm sorry. He just stood there. The sound of cars, voices, the city, all faded into nothing. In that moment, it hit him. He had lost everything. That same day, Tasha met with a lawyer, a young woman named Neka, who specialized in women's rights. I'm not here to sue him, Tasha explained calmly. I want to build something that protects women like me, those who can't escape. Neka nodded slowly. That's powerful, but it takes time and resources. I have time, Tasha said, her voice steady. And as for resources, I'll find them. Over the next few weeks, Tasha's story began spreading online, not as gossip, but as inspiration. She gave interviews about survival, forgiveness, and the strength to rebuild, but she never mentioned Chris's name. She didn't need to. Everyone already knew. She became a symbol, a voice for women who had been silenced. And the louder her voice grew, the smaller Chris's world became. One evening, Chris sat alone in the dark, watching one of her interviews on TV. The host asked, if you could say one thing to the man who hurt you, what would it be? Tasha's voice was calm, steady. I'd tell him I'm not angry anymore. I just hope he learns what love really means, before life teaches him the hard way. Chris stared at the screen. He whispered, You already taught me, Tasha. You already did. He turned off the TV and poured another drink. But this time it didn't numb the pain. Nothing did. His phone buzzed. A message from Bella. We need to talk. Meet me tomorrow at the cafe near Admiralty Road. For a moment, hope flickered. Maybe someone still cared. Maybe he could start over. The next day, he arrived early at the cafe. He waited for nearly 30 minutes, but Bella didn't show up. When he finally called, a strange man answered her phone. Hello, Chris said, confused. Who's this? The man chuckled. The man she's with now. Chris froze. What? Yeah, she said you're broke, unemployed, and crazy. She's done with you. Bro, move on. The line went dead. Chris's hand trembled as he put the phone down. His face turned pale. He sat there for a long time, staring at the untouched cup of coffee in front of him. The same thought kept echoing in his head. Everyone leaves me. That night, Tasha was sitting in bed when she received a message from an unknown number. You win. I'm tired. She stared at it for a long time. Her heart pounded. Then she typed back, don't say that. You still have a life. Fix it. But the message didn't deliver. The line was dead. Fear crept into her chest. She called Auntie Saad. Auntie, I think something's wrong. What happened? I think Chris might hurt himself. Auntie gasped. Then you better go and stop him before another death is on your hands. Tasha grabbed her keys and raced through the Lagos night. The city lights blurred past her as rain began to fall again. When she reached the house where everything had begun, the gate was open. She ran inside, shouting, Chris! The living room was dark. Bottles lay scattered across the floor. Then she saw him, sitting at the base of the stairs, staring at the same spot where she had fallen. His eyes were red. Empty! Chris! She said softly, walking toward him. He looked up slowly, his voice hoarse. You came back. Yes, she whispered. Put the bottle down. Please. He looked at her for a long moment, then dropped it. It shattered, the sound echoing through the room. I'm sorry, Tasha, he said, tears streaming down his face. I didn't want it to end like this. She knelt beside him, her voice shaking. Then let it end differently. You can start over. You can change. He looked into her eyes. I don't know how. Then let me show you, she said quietly. For the first time in months, they sat in silence. Two broken souls in the same room, surrounded by ghosts. But as she looked at him, she realized something deeper. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant freedom. From him, from the past, from the pain. She stood up slowly. Goodbye, Chris. He looked up, startled. Where are you going? Forward, she said softly. You should try it too. She walked out into the rain, leaving him alone with his choices. As thunder rolled above, Chris buried his face in his hands and cried, not just for what he had done, but for the man he had become. And as Tasha drove away, she whispered into the storm, That's for you, my baby. Mama kept her promise. Viewers, do you believe people who hurt us can truly change? If you were in Tasha's shoes, would you walk away or stay and help him heal? Drop your answer and tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story, only on Tales by Wealth. The morning after that storm felt strangely quiet. Lagos moved on as it always did. Buses honked. Street vendors shouted. Life continued. But for both Tasha and Chris, the silence was louder than the noise. Tasha woke up in her aunt's house with a pounding headache. Sleep had barely touched her. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Chris sitting by those stairs, broken, defeated, lost. Auntie Saad entered the room, carrying a tray of tea and bread. You didn't sleep again, ABI, she said softly. Tasha sighed. I went to see him last night. Saada's eyes widened. You did what? I thought he might hurt himself, Tasha said quietly. He sent a message. I couldn't just ignore it. The older woman shook her head in disbelief. You still care about him after everything he did? Tasha stared at the teacup for a moment before replying. It's not care, Andy. It's closure. I needed to see the end of the man who destroyed my beginning. That same morning, across town, Chris sat in the same spot on the floor, his face pale and his eyes empty. He hadn't moved all night. The rain had stopped, but the silence in the house felt heavy, almost suffocating. He looked around at the wreckage, bottles, torn papers, broken memories. On the wall, one photo still hung crooked. Him and Tasha on their wedding day. Both smiling, both believing love would last forever. He stood slowly and reached for the photo. His fingers brushed over the glass, tracing Tasha's smile. Where did we go wrong? He whispered. For a brief second, he imagined what could have been. The baby, the laughter, the family dinners. Then reality struck like lightning. He had destroyed all of it with one push. He dropped the photo, and it shattered on the floor. Later that afternoon, Tasha met Neka, her lawyer, again. They sat in a quiet cafe, far from the noise of the main road. Neka smiled gently. You look lighter today. Maybe because I finally said goodbye, Tasha replied, stirring her coffee slowly. Are you ready to move on from this completely? Tasha nodded. Almost. But before I do, there's one more thing I have to do. Neka leaned forward. What's that? Tasha took a deep breath. I'm selling the house. The one you shared with him? Yes, Tasha said firmly. I don't want to leave him with anything that reminds him of the life he ruined. That house was built with my sweat, too. He'll learn what it feels like to start from nothing. Neka nodded slowly. That's bold. Legal, but bold. You sure you want to go through with it? I'm sure, Tasha said. It's time to reclaim what's mine. By evening, a letter was delivered to Chris's home. It was stamped with a lawyer's seal and bore Tasha's name. He tore it open and read, Notice of property transfer. Due to undisputed evidence of financial contribution and domestic abuse, the court has granted partial ownership of the property to Mrs. Natasha Adeyemi. The said property is to be sold and the proceeds divided accordingly. Chris sank into the chair, clutching the paper. She's selling the house? His voice cracked. Our house. He stood up, pacing, anger flashing in his eyes. She's taking everything. Everything. He grabbed his phone and dialed her number. She answered after a few seconds, her voice calm. Chris. What are you doing, Tasha? He barked. You can't just erase me from everything. She sighed. I'm not erasing you, Chris. I'm erasing the pain. That house is full of it. It's all I have left. Her tone turned cold. You should have thought about that before you pushed me. And with that, she ended the call. Chris threw the phone across the room. No, she can't do this to me. But deep down, he knew she already had. Weeks later, a for sale sign stood proudly in front of the house. Real estate agents moved in and out, inspecting, photographing, preparing listings. Chris had been forced to move into a small apartment in the outskirts of Lagos, a far cry from his old luxury. Meanwhile, Tasha watched the sale unfold from a distance, standing by her car across the street. Her eyes didn't blink as the workers carried boxes out. A man in a suit walked past her and said, Madam, the offer came in. It's a good price. Take it, she said. Just like that. Yes, I'm not selling a house. I'm selling a past. That night, she went home and opened her notebook again, the same one she started writing in when she left the hospital. Page by page, she reread her own pain, the memories, the anger, the despair. Then, slowly, she began tearing the pages out, one after another, feeding them into a small fire bowl by her window. Each sheet turned to ash. Each tear felt like release. When she was done, she whispered, It's over. But as the last paper burned, one thing caught her eye, a photo tucked between the pages. It was the ultrasound of her baby. She held it close to her chest and wept quietly. I did all this for you, she whispered. But I think I can finally let you go. The next morning, she got a message on her phone. Property sold. Payment cleared. She smiled for the first time in months. At the same moment, in a small apartment far away, Chris received a bank alert. Half the house's payment had been deposited into his account. He stared at it, tears blurring his eyes. For a long time, he said nothing. Then he whispered, She still left me with something. He looked around the small room, bare walls, a single chair, a mattress on the floor. It wasn't much, but maybe it was enough to start again. Later that day, Tasha stood on the balcony, watching the sunset over Lagos. Her aunt joined her, smiling softly. So it's finally done? Tasha nodded. Yes, it's really done. Saad chuckled. You see? You didn't need to destroy him to find peace. Tasha smiled faintly. Maybe peace was never about revenge. Maybe it was about walking away. Her aunt placed a hand on her shoulder. That's my girl. Strong, but wiser now. Tasha looked up at the fading sun and whispered, stronger and free. That evening, as darkness settled over the city, Tasha posted one final message on her foundation's social media page. To every woman who has ever survived pain, remember, you don't need revenge to win. Healing itself is victory. Choose peace. Tasha Adeyemi, The post went viral overnight. Thousands shared it. Women from different countries wrote comments of hope and strength. And somewhere in that long list of comments, one stood out, written from a new anonymous account. You were my light in the darkness. I'll spend the rest of my life trying to be the man you believed I could be. CA. She read it, smiled faintly, and whispered, Goodbye, Chris. The dawn broke gently over Lagos, golden light spilling through the windows of Auntie Sada's home. Birds sang on the rooftops, and for the first time in months, Tasha woke without the sound of nightmares in her ears. No stairs, no screaming, no fall, just silence. Calm, comforting silence. She sat up in bed, stretched, and let the morning air wash over her face. Her reflection in the mirror startled her. She looked peaceful, different. There was no anger in her eyes anymore, just something softer. Acceptance. Auntie Saad knocked lightly and stepped in, holding a steaming bowl of porridge. Good morning, my daughter, she said cheerfully. You're glowing today. Tasha smiled faintly. Maybe because I finally feel alive again. Her aunt said with a knowing smile. You've carried pain long enough. It's time you start carrying joy again. Tasha laughed quietly. I wouldn't even know where to begin. Saad chuckled. Begin with breakfast. Begin with laughter. Begin with yourself. Later that week, Tasha was invited to speak at a women's empowerment seminar in Lekki. The hall was packed. Young girls, mothers, widows, all sitting eagerly, waiting to hear her story. As she walked onto the stage in her elegant blue Ankara gown, the crowd applauded warmly. She smiled, holding the microphone, and took a slow breath before she began. When I fell down those stairs, I thought my life was over, she said softly, her voice trembling just slightly. But I learned that sometimes what breaks you also awakens you. The hall grew silent. Every ear leaned closer. I lost my baby. I lost my marriage. I lost my peace. But in that pain, I found my strength. I learned that forgiveness is not weakness. It's power. She paused, scanning the faces in the audience, women nodding, some wiping tears. Forgiveness doesn't mean you accept what they did, she continued. It means you refuse to let it control you anymore. Thunderous applause filled the hall, and for the first time, Tasha didn't feel like a victim telling her story. She felt like a teacher. After the event, several women surrounded her, asking questions, thanking her, hugging her. A journalist approached with a camera. Mrs. Adeyemi, how does it feel to have turned your pain into a voice that heals others? Tasha smiled. It feels right. I think that's what my child would have wanted. That night, as she scrolled through her Foundation's page, she noticed hundreds of new followers and messages. One message caught her attention. I saw you on TV today. I'm proud of you. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just thanking you for showing me who I really was. Chris. She stared at the message for a long moment. Her hand trembled slightly as she typed back. Thank you. I wish you peace. Then she put her phone down and exhaled deeply. Something inside her finally let go. It was as though a door that had been locked for years had finally opened. Meanwhile, in a small apartment in Yaba, Chris sat at a wooden table, watching the evening news replay her speech. Her voice filled the room, strong, calm, full of purpose. He smiled weakly. You did it, Tasha, he whispered. You really did it. He'd started working at a small logistics company recently. Nothing fancy, but enough to survive. His nights were quiet now. No whiskey, no shouting, just silence and reflection. He no longer saw himself as the man who once had it all. He saw himself as a man who was learning to rebuild, piece by piece. Weeks later, Tasha's Foundation held its first official women's retreat in Badagry, a 2-day healing program by the ocean. The women arrived from across Nigeria and even from Ghana and the U.S., drawn by her story. They shared their pains around a fire, sang songs, and prayed together. Tasha watched them with tears in her eyes, realizing that something she built from brokenness was now healing others. That night, under the moonlight, she walked barefoot along the beach. The waves lapped softly at her feet. The air smelled of salt and new beginnings. She looked up at the stars and whispered, Are you watching, my child? Mommy made it. The wind brushed her cheeks as if answering her. The next morning, as she prepared to close the retreat, a small girl ran up to her, maybe 8 years old, and hugged her tightly. "Thank you, Auntie Tasha," the girl said shyly. "My mummy said your story gave her courage to leave my daddy. He used to hurt her." Tasha knelt and hugged the girl back, tears glistening in her eyes. "You're very brave. You'll grow up to be strong, just like your mummy." The child smiled, waved, and ran off. Tasha watched her go, her heart full. That little girl's joy was the sign she didn't know she'd been waiting for. Her pain had finally turned into purpose. That evening, as the retreat ended, Tasha stood before the group and said, "When I came here, I thought I was helping you heal. But now I see that you've helped me heal too. We rise when we lift each other." The women clapped, some crying, others laughing. It was a moment of peace, pure, glowing peace. But far away, in Lagos, something was shifting. A week later, Neka, her lawyer, called suddenly. "Tasha, have you seen the news?" "No, why?" "There's been an accident," Neka said quietly. "A container truck lost control near 3rd Mainland Bridge. The victim was Christopher Adeyemi." Tasha froze. The world went silent again. What did you just say?" "He didn't make it," Neka whispered. "I'm so sorry." The phone slipped from Tasha's hand. For a moment, she just sat there, staring at nothing. Her heart pounded. Images flooded her mind. Chris laughing, shouting, crying, apologizing. Even after everything. She hadn't wished him death. Tears rolled down her cheeks. "Oh, Chris," she whispered. Annie Saad rushed in when she saw her crying. "What happened?" Tasha looked up weakly. "He's gone, Annie. He's really gone." Saad held her close. "Cry, my child. Let it out." Tasha buried her face in her aunt's shoulder and sobbed. For all the pain, all the anger, she still grieved. Because once, before the fall and the hurt, she had loved him deeply. That night, she lit a candle on her balcony and placed a single white lily beside it. The flame flickered gently in the breeze. "Goodbye, Chris," she whispered. "I hope you find peace where I couldn't give it to you." The candle burned until dawn, its smoke rising into the morning sky, like a spirit finally set free. The days after Chris's death passed like a long, quiet storm. Lagos was its usual chaos outside. Car horns, street vendors, the smell of roasted corn and rain-soaked earth. But inside Tasha's world, everything moved in slow motion. Grief felt strange to her. It wasn't sharp like it had been before. It was soft, heavy, and confusing. She hadn't spoken to anyone for 2 days, except her aunt. She barely ate, barely slept. She kept replaying his last message in her mind. "I saw you on TV today. I'm proud of you. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just thanking you for showing me who I really was." And now he was gone. No chance for another apology. No chance for one last word. The morning of the burial came. It was a small ceremony, quiet, simple under a gray Lego sky. Tasha stood a few steps away from the grave, wearing a plain black dress and a headscarf. She didn't want attention. She just wanted to say goodbye. The priest spoke softly, dust to dust, ashes to ashes. Chris's mother wept loudly beside the casket. The sound was painful, raw, and human. Tasha's eyes filled with tears. Despite everything, she still felt the sting of loss. She stepped forward slowly, dropped a single white flower into the grave, and whispered, "May your soul find peace, Chris. May your mistakes teach others to love better than we did." Then she turned and walked away. No drama, no bitterness, just silence. That evening, back at home, she sat on the balcony again. Annie Saad joined her, holding 2 cups of zobo. "You did the right thing going to that funeral," she said gently. Tasha nodded. It felt necessary, like closing the last chapter of a painful book. Her aunt sighed. "You've walked through fire, my child. But look at you now, you came out shining." Tasha smiled faintly. "Sometimes the ashes teach you more than the flames ever could." Weeks turned into months. Life began to take shape again, not the old life, but something new. Her foundation grew rapidly. Sponsors came in from Abuja, Ghana, even Atlanta. She hosted radio talks, TV interviews, and workshops for young women on emotional healing and financial independence. People started calling her Mama Strength. She laughed at the nickname, but deep inside, it warmed her. For the first time, her story was no longer about pain. It was about rebirth. One afternoon, she visited the small village where her late mother was buried. She hadn't been there in years. The red earth road was rough, the air filled with the scent of palm wine and rain. She knelt beside her mother's grave and whispered, "Ma, your daughter finally learned to live again. I carried your strength all along." The wind rustled through the trees like an answer. When she turned to leave, she saw a little boy playing nearby, laughing loudly as he chased a butterfly. He looked up and waved at her. She smiled back. Something about his laughter healed a piece of her she didn't know was still broken. That evening, as she drove back to Lagos, she played soft gospel music on the radio. The lyrics said, "When you pass through the fire, you shall not be burned." She smiled, tears filling her eyes. "That's me," she whispered. "I walked through fire and came out alive." But just as her heart began to rest, life reminded her that healing doesn't mean forgetting. A week later, she received a letter. No return address, no name, just her own written neatly on an envelope. She opened it carefully. Inside was a handwritten note. "Dear Tasha, if you're reading this, then I didn't get to say goodbye the way I wanted. I know I don't deserve peace after what I did, but I hope you find yours. I've left behind something for you. Not money, not gifts, but a letter for your foundation's future. You'll find it with NECA. Tell the world my story too, not to defend me, but to warn others who lose control like I did. You were right. Forgiveness is freedom. Chris." Tasha sat still, tears falling freely onto paper. She hadn't expected this. Not closure like this. She called NECA immediately. The lawyer confirmed it. Chris had left a written confession and statement for Foundation, authorizing part of his life insurance payout to support victims of domestic abuse. Tasha covered her face, sobbing quietly. He really did it. He really made it right. Weeks later, the Foundation held a memorial conference dedicated to both survivors and reformed offenders. At the center of the hall stood a tall banner that read, "From brokenness to healing, the journey of redemption." Tasha gave the keynote address, her voice steady but full of emotion. "Some stories don't end with victory or revenge," she said. "Some end with understanding. We can't change the past, but we can build a future that honors it." The audience rose in applause. Some cried, some clapped, but everyone felt something, the weight of forgiveness. That night, when the hall emptied, Tasha sat alone in front of the stage. She looked up at the banner one more time and whispered, "Rest, Chris. Your story will save lives." A gust of wind brushed against her cheek. She smiled, wiping a tear. What about you, dear listener? Do you believe true redemption is possible for someone who has done the unthinkable? Can forgiveness heal even the deepest scars? Share your thoughts in the comments below and tell us where you're watching from. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this story with someone who needs hope. Only on Tales by Wealth. The year was drawing to a close. Lagos shimmered under December sun, bright, restless, alive. Markets were crowded with Christmas decorations. Tailors worked overnight, and children ran through the streets with balloons and ice cream. Life had moved on, but for Tasha, it had become something else entirely. Peaceful, purposeful, and full of meaning. Her foundation, the House of Healing, had grown into a movement. It wasn't just about women anymore. It was about family, forgiveness, and second chances. Radio stations across Nigeria invited her to share her message. Churches quoted her story during sermons. Even international NGOs reached out for collaboration. And every time she stood before a crowd, she reminded them, pain doesn't define us. What we do after pain, that's what makes us who we are. That morning, Tasha was preparing for a television appearance. Her makeup artist worked quietly while the cameraman adjusted the lights. A young producer peeked in and said, "Mrs. Adeyemi, we go live in 5 minutes." She nodded, glancing at herself in the mirror. For a moment, her reflection felt like a stranger, strong, polished, unshaken. Then she smiled softly. "You made it," she whispered to her own reflection. The show began. The host, a warm-voiced woman named Amaka, smiled and said, "Our guest today is a woman whose story has touched millions, survivor, advocate, and founder of the House of Healing, Mrs. Natasha Adeyemi." Applause filled the studio. Tasha smiled, nodding humbly. "Natasha," the host began, "it's been almost a year since a tragedy that changed your life. You've turned your pain into purpose. But tell us, what keeps you going?" Tasha took a deep breath. "The thought that maybe one woman somewhere, watching or listening, might see herself in me," she said softly, "and that she'll find strength before it's too late." The audience clapped again. Amaka leaned closer. "And if you could say something to your younger self, the woman before the fall, what would you say?" Tasha's eyes softened. "I'd tell her that love is never supposed to hurt, and that walking away isn't failure, it's survival." A hush fell over the room. Cameras zoomed in. Then she added quietly, "I'd also tell her to forgive sooner, because holding on to pain doesn't punish the other person. It only poisons your soul." The crowd erupted in applause again. Amaka wiped a tear and said, "Thank you, Natasha. You've turned your scars into light." That evening, after the recording, Tasha visited the beach alone, the same beach where her first retreat had been held. The waves danced under the orange sunset, and children played in the distance. She sat on the sand, closed her eyes, and let the wind wrap around her. In that moment, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Peace without guilt. She whispered, "I'm free." A soft wave rolled over her toes, as if the sea itself was agreeing. A week later, she received a call from Neka, her lawyer. "Tasha, something amazing happened." Neka said excitedly, "Do you remember the letter Chris left for the foundation?" "Yes, what about it?" "It inspired a new law proposal in Abuja, the Domestic Peace Bill. It's meant to support both victims and rehabilitation programs for offenders." They quoted your story in his letter in the draft. Tasha froze for a moment. "You mean our story?" "Yes," Neka said, smiling through the phone. "You both turned pain into policy." Tasha laughed softly, tears glistening in her eyes. He finally did something right. Later that night, she hosted a quiet dinner with her volunteers. They toasted to the year's success. Laughter, food, and joy filled the air. When it was her turn to speak, Tasha stood, holding her glass high. "I thank every one of you. You believed in something born out of tears. You turned sorrow into a home for others. Because of you, women now have a voice. And because of that voice, I found mine." They clapped, raising their glasses high. Her assistant, a cheerful young woman named Ada, smiled and whispered, "Madam Tasha, you're not just healing others. You're healing generations." Tasha smiled. "We're healing together." The next morning, she woke early and took a walk through her neighborhood. She passed a group of children playing with kites, and one little boy ran up to her, grinning. "Auntie Tasha, my mama said your story made her strong," he shouted. Tasha knelt, smiling. "Then she's the real hero. Tell her that for me, okay?" The boy nodded eagerly and ran off again, laughter echoing behind him. Tasha watched him go, her heart swelling. For the first time, her joy wasn't shadowed by sadness. That weekend, she decided to visit Chris's grave. She hadn't gone back since the burial, but now she felt ready. The cemetery was quiet. The grass had grown tall around the tombstones, and the air smelled of rain and earth. She carried a small white flower, a lily, the same kind he once brought to her hospital bed. She knelt before his grave and smiled faintly. "Hi, Chris," she whispered. "I came to tell you something." The wind stirred gently, rustling the leaves above. "I forgive you, truly this time. Not out of pity, but because I'm finally free. And I think you'd be proud of who I became." She placed the flower gently on the soil. "Your story is helping others now. You're still making a difference in your own way." A soft tear slid down her cheek, but she didn't wipe it away. It felt right. As she stood and walked away, the evening sun broke through the clouds, bathing the cemetery in warm, golden light. It felt like a blessing. That night, Tasha wrote in her journal, "Some stories don't end when people die. They live on in lessons, in hearts, in hope. I've learned that healing doesn't mean erasing the past. It means carrying it differently. She closed the journal, smiled, and whispered to silence, "Chapter closed." What do you think, family? Can healing and forgiveness truly transform pain into purpose? If you were in Tasha's place, would you have been able to forgive the man who took everything from you? Share your thoughts in the comments. Tell us where you're watching from, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and stay tuned for the final chapter, only on Tales by Wealth. The morning sun poured gently through the curtains of Tasha's new apartment, bright, peaceful, and filled with soft wind from the ocean. The city of Lagos hung below her, but she felt far from the noise. Her world was calm now, ordered, reborn. The once broken woman who had fallen down the stairs no longer lived here. In her place stood a survivor, a leader, and a woman whose pain had become a testimony. Tasha stood by her window, holding a cup of tea, looking out at the bustling streets. Christmas decorations shimmered below. She smiled faintly. Auntie Saad entered the room, humming an old Yoruba hymn. "My daughter," she said warmly, "you're glowing again. Oh, this Lego sun loves you." Tasha laughed. "No, Auntie, I just love myself again." "Ah." Saad clapped her hands joyfully. "That's what I like to hear. God has done it." Tasha nodded softly. "Yes, he has. He took what was meant to destroy me and turned it into strength." That day, Tasha had been invited to speak at university graduation in Ibadan, her biggest audience yet. Thousands of young men and women had gathered, eager to hear the woman whose story had changed lives across Africa. As she walked onto stage, the crowd rose in applause. Cameras flashed. The moment felt sacred, not because of fame, but because of purpose. She took the microphone, took a slow breath, and began. "When I was younger," she said, "I thought strength meant staying silent. I thought love meant enduring pain. I was wrong." The hall quieted instantly. Real love is never violent. Real strength is walking away when your heart is breaking, but your soul is screaming for freedom. The crowd listened in silence, every word sinking deep. "I lost my baby. I lost my home. But I found something greater, myself." She smiled gently, scanning the audience. "If you've ever been broken," she continued, "remember this. You are not the pieces. You are the person who learns to put them back together." The room erupted in applause, thunderous and emotional. Many stood with tears in their eyes. Later, during a private interview, a journalist asked, "Mrs. Adeyemi, what's next for you after all this?" Tasha smiled. "Peace," she said simply. "I just want to live it, teach it, share it." The journalist nodded. "And if your late husband could hear you now, what would you tell him?" Her eyes softened and her voice trembled just a little. "I'd tell him, I forgive you, and I hope you've forgiven yourself too." She smiled faintly, then added, "In the end, forgiveness wasn't for him, it was for me." Months passed. Life settled into rhythm again. Her foundation expanded across West Africa. She partnered with hospitals, churches, and media houses to launch Save Voices, a hotline for domestic abuse victims. Her face appeared on billboards. From pain to power, the story of Tasha Adeyemi. But she never saw herself as a celebrity. She was simply a woman who lived through fire and came out holding light for others. One evening, while walking along the beach, she noticed a little girl sitting alone, crying softly. Tasha knelt beside her. "Hey, sweetheart, what's wrong?" The girl sniffled. "My mummy and daddy were shouting again. I ran away." Tasha smiled gently and wiped her tears. "You're brave for speaking up. You know what? Sometimes grown-ups forget how to talk without hurting." The girl looked up. "Will they stop fighting?" Tasha hesitated, then said softly, "One day they will learn. But until then, you must keep shining, okay?" The little girl nodded and smiled. Tasha stood, her heart full. She realized that was what her whole journey had been about. Not revenge, not justice, but light. Light for others to find their way out of darkness. That night, as she returned home, Tasha opened a small wooden box where she kept her child's ultrasound photo, the only memory she had of the baby she lost. She looked at it for a long moment, tears glistening in her eyes. Your life had meaning, she whispered softly. Because you lived, I became strong. Because of you, I'm healing others. And one day, I'll see you again. She kissed the photo and placed it back carefully. Then she blew out the candle beside it. A quiet promise fulfilled. A year later, the House of Healing Foundation celebrated its first anniversary in a grand Lagos hall filled with laughter, music, and hope. On stage, Tasha gave a short speech. This foundation began with tears, she said, her voice steady. But today, it stands on love. Love for every survivor who chose to live. My story began with pain, but yours can begin with courage. Let's keep healing together. The crowd erupted in cheers. Balloons floated into the air, and the atmosphere shimmered with joy. As she stepped off the stage, Auntie Sod hugged her tightly. You've made me proud, my child. Tasha smiled, whispering, We made it, Auntie. Later that night, as she sat on her balcony, watching fireworks light up the sky, she felt a familiar breeze. It was soft, gentle, like a whisper from beyond. And in that quiet moment, she closed her eyes and heard a voice in her heart, faint and loving. Thank you, Mama. You can rest now. She smiled, tears rolling down her cheeks. Rest well, my child, she whispered back. We're both free now. 5 years passed. Tasha now lived in Ghana, running an international women's initiative. Her name had become a symbol of hope across Africa. One afternoon, during an interview for an American TV network, the host asked, Tasha, if you could sum up your life's message in one sentence, what would it be? Tasha smiled gently, her eyes shining. Pain tried to bury me, but forgot. I was a seed. The camera faded on her face, peaceful, strong, and full of grace. A final caption appeared on the screen. He pushed his wife down the stairs. The fall cost her child. The return cost him everything. A true tale of pain, forgiveness, and rebirth. Family. This story reminds us that no matter how deep the pain, there's always a path to healing. Forgiveness doesn't erase what happened. It frees the heart to start again. Tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Do you believe people can truly change? And what does forgiveness mean to you? Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful stories that touch the soul. Until next time, this is Tales by Wealth, where every pain births a purpose.